Greetings, everyone. This is Rock and Roll Spot Connection with the Weekly Comic Book Roundup. We're going to be starting things off with this week's X-Men book, Spider-Man book, and Marvel Cosmic book. So let's get this video kicked off with Excalibur, number 13. Ten of Swords, Part 9. So far, I want to say 5 of the swordsmen of Krakoa have gathered with their blades at the summoning circle, or at the circle, the name of which I can't entirely remember. Anywho, so we begin with Jamie and Brian Braddock arriving via Griffin at the Starlight Citadel, where their sister Betsy is awaiting them, as is Saturnine, and, well, turns out that Brian has brought the Sword of Might. Lady Saturnine is not too happy about Betsy's presence, nor is she all that happy about Jamie, as she'd never met Jamie before, but realizes he's he is a bit mad. We also get a write-up on the Sword of Might, which is, to say the least, interesting. Saturnine takes the Braddocks to a garden wherein there's statues of previous Captain Britons. And it's very clear that she does not like Betsy at all, and very much wants Brian to retake the mantle of Captain Britain, as he used to, and in fact, as she knows Brian. She, in fact, Saturnine, in fact, was a constant foe of Excalibur way back in the day, when Brian was leading the team as Captain Britain, and then briefly as Britannic. Betsy's trying to get Brian to draw the sword, but he won't. And they're constantly fighting with one another. That night, the interdimensional Captain Britain Corps from earlier in the series. This is the interdimensional versions of Rogue, Gambit, Jubilee, and Richter, each having been given the mantle of Captain Britain. They attack Jamie and attempt to kill him. We also get a write-up on the Captain Britain Corps as a whole. While the interdimensional captains are going after Jamie, Betsy is practicing with her psychic sword, though the Sword of Might is on hand. And she continues to make their way. They find where Jamie has at least somewhat managed to fight off his guards, or his attackers. And in fact, he then kills the Jubilee Captain Britain in the hopes of evening up the odds. And then one of the Gambit Captain Britain's cards burns the scabbard off of the Sword of Might, forcing it to basically be unsheathed in Brian's hand. And Jamie lays claim to Brian, naming him Captain Avalon. Saturnine is quite impressed and makes it very... And as Betsy had earlier said, she was not issued a choice to be Captain Britain, wherein one chooses either the Amulet of Right or the Sword of Might. she and the other interdimensional Catamarans are all to be imprisoned. And while Saturnine attempts to take the amulet from her, Betsy uses her telekinesis and destroys it. And he requests that, Saturnine requests that Captain Avalon escort her back to her quarters. And Betsy's trying to figure a way out of the prison, the cells, though she does manage to contact the Gambit Captain Britain, who explains that Rogue tried to make her way out, fly out into the blackness of the cell, got real lost and real cold, and she can't even get warm now. And then Jamie detects the conversation and joins in as well. But he's a plan. And he picks it, basically, he manages to get Betsy to jump out of the cell, and he picks her up on his Griffin, and they fly by Saturnine's chamber, where, yes, Brian is there, and Saturnine is trying to seduce him. And it turns out that the Starlight Sword is kept in her chambers. We also get a write-up on the Starlight Sword. And she offers the sword to Brian, and to leave the Sword of Might behind, and take the Starlight Sword. And Brian seemingly gives in to Saturnine's advances. And so they charge in, they take the sword, and Brian reveals his ruse to Saturnine. And Betsy explains that Saturnine was awfully confident that Brian would fall in line with her when she wrote the prophecy. Saturnine wrote the prophecies that were spoken of. So, and it turns out she had an ace in the hole in case Brian didn't. The fact that she keeps the Starlight Sword in her chamber, in her bed chamber. The prophecy in question being a hero destined to brandish what the earth hath swallowed, and an echo doomed to yearn for what the stars hath forsworn. Apparently, Saturnine hoped that would tear Brian and Betsy apart. Not that instead Brian would find his purpose defending Jamie. And when Saturnine asks if Brian's other betrayer, he simply says that he is Captain Avalon, humble servant to his family's kingdom. A role that means more to him now than any Saturnine could offer. He also reminds her that he is a married man, but one who is willing to distract her for a cause. And so on Krakoa, the Braddocks return. Well, Betsy and Brian step through the gate as Brian requires a mutant to go with him through the gate. And he states that he's glad that Betsy and Jamie turned up when they did, as he's not sure what Saturnine was about to demand of him. Though Betsy states that she has a feeling that Brian would have suffered the humiliation of it all. But she also applauds him for not succumbing to her charms. And then with... Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5... Yep. And so 7 of the swords are accounted for. Brian says, for Queen and Country, which Betsy echoes, mine and yours. And then Brian says, mine and yours. And it says that the narration states that in that moment, the hero of the people who were not her own spoke a bardic truth. She would indeed lose more than she had planned for. And that is where the issue ends. Which brings us to chapter 10. Get this sucker back. There we are. In X-Men number 13. Ooh, excuse me. Anyways. So we begin in the healing gardens, focusing on Banshee, who's still recovering from his injuries. We also get a write-up on the Swords Grasscutter and Godkiller. But the main thing in the healing gardens is that Apocalypse is not recovering. He seems to be getting worse, and the pain is less and less bearable. Hope explains that they're working on another Apocalypse egg right now, but they're starting everything from scratch. So it might take a day, maybe 2, maybe even more. But Charles suggests maybe she could assist Healer and augment his powers. However, Healer's afraid that could just as easily kill Apocalypse as help him. And Apocalypse insists they do just that. So, Hope augments Healer's abilities. And it manages to... It seems to be doing the trick when it comes to Apocalypse. But he remembers the past. It was Okara, the one land. It was ancient before that word existed, but not yet old in the way they were old. The twilight sword of the enemy tore the world asunder, and what was one became two. 100 of our greatest champions took the war to the enemy. 100 champions and their champion, the White Sword. And from the chasm between them, from that dark world, the enemy poured into this world. I do not know what happened on the other side of that rift, but the horde's numbers dwindled, and as they became weak, we became strong. The living icons of Okara, the twin elementals of life, were the first to fall. Thousands, tens of thousands followed. Let me tell you of the glory of Genesis. The broken lands ran red with mutant blood, and more would have surely been spilled if not for the 100. She was stronger than us all, strong enough to break them, turn them back, to reduce the enemy to peace. And so, what looks very similar to the Chamber of the Quiet Council, Apocalypse and his family are met by the delegation from Okara. They bring a gift, a mask. One of them puts the mask on, and with the mask, one of the demons says, I see now what all the furor is about. I could read you if I wanted, even a world away, which is closer than any one world should be to another. But there's no need. I know quality when I see it. Conquest is always best when facing a true test. Who is it that seeks out someone at their weakest? And in that spirit, I would like to make an offer. To use strong mutants of great quality. And so make the offer. However, the demon goes on. If only they simply could give it to you. But generosity is nowhere to be found in the demon's nature. Sincerity, however, is. And this demon wants the mutants to earn that offer. And so Apocalypse's wife comes forward, offering to destroy the demons, which she does with sorcery. And Apocalypse's wife, Genesis, declares she finds their enemy wanting. Apocalypse didn't hear what the offer was, but it was made telepathically to Genesis. All he remembers is how much more determined she became, how much stronger she seemed, until her sister Iska the Unbeaten turned. The idea of a simple end died that day. There would be no clean victory, and it broke all of us. Her most of all. And she explains that their only choice is a sacrifice. They know what they have to do, so they simply must do it. They were born of this land, and the land will save them. They will seal the breach, and Rocco will hold as long as they stand, as long as they breathe. Genesis tells Apocalypse to watch them. They will show him what a mutant does for their people. And he says that he wishes he could go with them, but Genesis tells him that they both know he can't because he isn't strong enough. And she tells him to stay and use what time they buy him to make this world something that can stand against their enemy. She tells him to judge them, so that they and he become what they need. She said only the fittest remain. We then get a write-up on the power of annihilation, the golden helm of Amenth. Amenth is a black planet of black death, a hellscape of demons and things of a darker origin, a chaos world of wild space that would be completely uncontrollable to the living, if not for the golden helm of annihilation that commands the unconquered horde of Amenth. The person who wears the helm rules a dark world, but the helm itself rules the wearer. Possessed by some elder god, a primordial force of the spirit of that world made manifest, the helm is seductive. The helm is all-consuming, and only aware of great strength and power can hope to live through the experience. It is a crown for the fit, and only the fit can rule in Amenthi hell. But back in the present, Apocalypse is healed. And Hope states he's whole, however, Apocalypse disagrees, saying he's far from whole. But he is well enough to travel, and he will return shortly. And Xavier asks where he's going, and he says to Lee that he needs a sword. Which brings us to a write-up on Scarab, and then in western Egypt, the Libyan desert, the Temple of the Horsemen, Gorgon takes Apocalypse to... that's where Gorgon takes Apocalypse to find his sword. There's nothing... We're going to realize there's nothing living within the temple. But Apocalypse says that the pyramids, he remembers when the pyramids were pyres, the fire kissing heaven and its twin inferno swimming in the night sea. But now he knows that this place is a monument to the living, and it angers him. He tells Gorgon to wait there. As he goes in, he finds sarcophagi based on his original four horsemen. Sarcophagi he promptly destroys to reveal his sword. He then destroys the temple as he leaves. Gorgon comments upon seeing the sword that it looks like a sharp blade, to which Apocalypse states it is. And then he insists that Gorgon watch as he wield it. And the two of them fly off, presumably, to Krakoa. And that is where the issue ends. Next week will bring us to the halfway point of the story in Ten of Swords, Stasis. Next up, we've got Juggernaut, number 2. Where we left off, Juggernaut's new friend, D-Cell, suggested that maybe Juggernaut could, try to make a name for himself as a hero going after the Hulk. And so, That's what he's doing. The issue is, it's we get some flash. We see we see damage control kind of helping out with the setup for capturing the Hulk. Bits and pieces of the fight. The Hulk is just, figures that Juggernaut's just being stupid, and it's not going to do him much good. We then get a flashback to months ago when he returned to Earth. And Xavier was talking to him telepathically to make sure he was okay. And Kane actually thought that Xavier wanted to know if, or figured that Charles was making sure he was okay to travel, so that he could, go to Krakoa and rejoin the X-Men. And Charles says that yes, he is checking in on his brother, but Krakoa is only for mutants, and thusly Kane cannot set foot on the island. But Charles does believe in Kane. And Charles believes that Kane will make the right choices. And so the fight continues between Hulk and Juggernaut. And as they get close to D-Cell and the damage control folks, D-Cell basically manages to slow down Hulk, but it takes a lot to slow down Hulk compared to slowing down Juggernaut. They get Hulk in, and they manage to imprison the Hulk. And working with the Juggernaut is described like this. Good news, you get to play in the NFL. Bad news, it's with the New York Jets. And another flashback after Kane was out of the hospital in Budapest. He's moved on to Budapest. Going through the catacombs. And he's looking for something. The banished deity, Setarak. And his guide finally recognizes him as Kane Marco, the Juggernaut, and asks Kane what he wants there. And he says he wants to find a way to be recognized again. Back in the present, the Hulk is imprisoned, and the local townsfolk are basically ripping into Hulk, asking questions. Farmer talking about how Hulk wrecked their tractors and cost them their crops. Woman talking about how Hulk destroyed an entire apartment complex, and she and her family lost everything they owned. A man talking about how his father was so scared that he had a heart attack and died 2 days afterwards. Things just continue on and on. And as it's going on, Hulk smiles. D-Cell notes that he's owning this. Like he's always going to have the power to roll over anyone or anything. And she thinks about it and just kind of opts to shut up and then turns off her live stream. And she asks if Kane's alright. So it looks like he ate 50 pounds of Taco Bell, and he also says that 50 pounds of Taco Bell is like a light snack. Then Hulk gets out, and Kane suggests, hey, get everyone out of here. But before things escalate, Hulk asks, he says, hey, we don't need to fight. Alright? The people have had their say. That's good. But he's got one question. And he explains he will know if they're lying. And so he asks if anyone works for Roxxon. One guy mentions that he works at one of the gas stations. And Hulk basically says he thought this may have been an organized operation against him. But it's just a bad episode of Dr. Phil. And, what you guys are what everyone's crying about, he gets it. But it wasn't him. It was the big guy. Hulk smash. Hulk like beans. That ain't him. Then he says every single thing that people said tonight could also be said about Juggernaut. And then he has Shadow Base teleport him out of there. And while as he leaves, he says to Juggernaut, he tells Juggernaut he hopes the paycheck is worth the guilt. And Juggernaut admits that, yeah, Hulk was right. He's done the same. He's guilty of the same things Hulk has caused. But Hulk had an excuse. The mind, when he did those things, he had the mind of a child. Juggernaut, however, he knew what he was doing every time he did it. Next day, Juggernaut and D-Cell return to Manhattan. And as they do, Kane is served with court papers. He's being sued for the bankruptcy of his construction company. And D-Cell realizes that the only reason they probably were aware, the company was even aware of where they were landing, was she was live streaming. It turns out, though, that Kane's being sued for $25 million. And that is where the issue ends. And it's actually it actually is a really good point about Juggernaut and Hulk. In fact, to be honest, even though Juggernaut is conventionally speaking an X-Men villain, character, he works as a Hulk villain because the two are so alike. They're in the same weight class strength-wise, strength and power-wise, but more often than not, Hulk is more like a force of nature. I mean, yeah, there have been times, such as currently, where he was intelligent. But he was usually when Hulk is intelligent, he's not smashing towns because he got mad. No. Usually when he's intelligent, he's trying to avoid smashing things. Unless it's something that, really needs to be smashed. Juggernaut, however, yeah, I mean, Kane ain't the brightest bulb in the world. He's not going to be helping Reed Richards and Tony Stark with his brilliant observations on zero-point energy. Because he doesn't know, because that's not his thing. His foster brother, Charles has the brains. And Kane ain't dumb. He's just not, hyper intelligent. But he does know he does clearly know what it is he's doing. He's very clearly in control of his faculties. The closest one could ever say he wasn't in control was during Fear itself, where he was overtaken by the essence of Kurthbreaker of Stone. But that's as close as one could get to saying. That's pretty much the only time you can really say that he wasn't in control. That he wasn't the one in the driver's seat, basically. Which brings us to the last video for our next book, Venom, number 29. Continuing Venom Beyond. Where we left off, Eddie and Dylan had found themselves in a alternate future that seemed to be controlled by a mysterious figure named Codex, who had managed to somewhat venomize all the heroes. A handful of heroes were left unvenomized, including one that appeared to be Agent Venom, but turned out to actually be Anne Weying, Eddie Brock's late ex-wife, and Dylan's late mother. We later found out that on this world, when Eddie went into the church that day to take himself out, nothing stopped him, and he did just that. Eventually, Anne would get the symbiote, and she's leading the resistance against Codex, who it turns out is in fact a grown-up version of that Earth's Dylan. Also, Scorpion had taken on the guise of Virus. They cobbled together armor and went after Eddie, only to end up falling into the portal that put them on the Earth, on Codex's Earth, and he's since been modified by Codex. So we begin with a flashback to a long time ago on the other Earth. Spider-Man and Anne are taking on Doc Ock. Turns out that Doc Ock is making a Occupy Wall Street pun with Octopi Wall Street, which Peter admits he can respect the pun, but read the room, And Anne informs him that he's pregnant, but she tells him that he'll be there to help her. And, because it's hard for a single mom. But Anne says she won't be a single mom. She's never alone. She tells him that they'll be just fine. And she swings off, and Peter says that he hates symbiote stuff. And years later, about Dylan's about the age he is now, or that Eddie's Dylan is, everything kind of his abilities click, and he takes a portion of her costume, and so that they lost him. It all happened so fast. Reading tried to help Dylan, but it was too late. Using the piece of symbiote that he took from Anne, Dylan was able to spawn hundreds of them, and then thousands, and then more of them there were more of the symbiotes than people. In the beginning, he seemed to be bonding to them, wearing the symbiotes like Anne or Venom or Eddie would. But as the war waged on and his powers grew, he began to shed them, to reject them, control them in a way that she didn't think was possible. He became a living hive mind. He was in control of the symbiotes, even if he wasn't bonded to them. He was kind of becoming null. And they spread across the planet, sowing whole continents and leaving nothing in his wake but darkness and the people he had assimilated into his hive. No one could stop him, and he basically destroyed the world. And we see various Venomized heroes, including a Venomized Cap, Cyclops, Iceman, Wolverine, Black Widow, Thor, Hulk, Iron Man. Not sure the guy with the horns but yeah. And he does, Eddie's Dylan does have similar abilities to Anne's. But he also, his Dylan is the same as Anne's. And Dylan can hear them talking. And he explains that, it's okay, he's not a baby, and, he's not the other one. He's not the other Dylan. He knows he's not Anne's son. He doesn't have a mom, and that's okay. He just asks that she not be afraid of him. And she walks away while Eddie tries to, comfort Dylan. And runs into Wade, whose severed head, basically, his head falls off, and he kind of makes his way over to her and explains. He says, "Hey, you guys need evac now. Codex tracked us." And so she does try to signal the evac, but is then promptly attacked by modified Scorpion. And then Eddie takes a massive electro wire and basically sticks it right up against Scorpion, saving Anne. And then Dylan destroys the symbiote that Mac's wearing, revealing him to be Mac Gargan. And Mac explains that he did this all because Eddie paralyzed him. You know, and going on saying, Carnage almost ripped my spine out and you just left. And Eddie's like, you were going to leave a kid to die. But then Mac does kind of get to Eddie by saying, hey, you can't just walk away from that. And Eddie admits that, yeah, he can't. So he's going to make Mac a deal. In part because he can give them intel on Codex. And because of that, Mac's going to take the rest of the team, or Anne and her team, to him. And that is where the issue ends. Which brings us to our final book for this video. Guardians of the Galaxy, number 7. With, yes, some of the most dreaded words ever written on the cover. Let's talk politics. So, Empire, that's a thing that happened. Super Skrull has been, for his part in various crimes over the years, has been transferred to the Diplomatic Corps. He's no longer a warrior, but rather he is to be a peacemaker rather than a warrior, as per Emperor Doric VIII. Also, the two versions of Moondragon have bonded into one, and for the most part it does look like the two teams of Guardians have also merged into one. So, the Guardians are on their way to a post-Empire, to post-war peace talks. And Phyla Bell is not happy with Moondragon. Basically, kind of explain, her wife merged her soul with that of a stranger. So yeah, she's kind of angry. And Moondragon figures, yeah, she probably should have considered or consulted with Phyla first. And Phyla adds that, she should have considered her first. And yeah, she's not happy in the slightest. And so, Novar, the duly appointed representative of the Utopian Kree faction, representing them at the peace talks, coming onto the Bowie's Bridge. And he looks just like Adam friggin' Ant. Which is actually a real nice nod, given the 80s pop rock tone that keeps coming up in this. But they arrive, and it takes him a while to realize, but yeah, he's dressed like Adam Ant. Apparently, Hercules roadied for Adam Ant back in 1982. And apparently, no one's to bring any entourage or anything. But the team is there for backup purposes. Also, we discovered that the representative of Earth is going to be no longer than Richard Rider, Nova. And while normally that would be Carol Danvers' job, seeing as how Carol is half Kree and actually enlisted in the with the Kree Skrull forces during the whole Kotati invasion, there is someone who thinks maybe she might be a teensy bit biased. They meet the Badoon representative, and then they meet the rest of the representatives. Nimbus Sternhoof, a Chimelian. Apparently also the Emperor of the Zemrix, Emperor Stoat, is supposed to be there. He's weaponized with various artificial abilities. So he's apparently absent. Captain Valor, a subaltern to Kulrit. Super Skrull is running the whole thing. Second diplomat for the Kree Skrull Alliance. Mentacle of the Rigelians, who's also been contributed to diplomatic service. Oracle 2 is the Shi'ar representative. Subguardian, telepath. Richard Ryder, Nova Prime, acting ambassador extraordinary for planet Earth. Zoralis Gupa, native of Sinulus, representing the Galactic Rim Collective. Lani Ho Ako, the first speaker of the Badoon Sisterhood. Empress Victoria, daughter of Jason, Queen of Spartax. We also have Peacebringer, the Chitauri diplomat drone, and of course, Novar. And so, but the first order of business is new agreements for the new situation should exist, and the regulations on biological weapons could definitely be streamlined. Empress Victoria states that the Kree Skrull Alliance would approve such measures since Kree genetic meddling weaponized the brood species. Though the Kree are quite happy to place the blame on the mutants of Earth, though Nova explains that he's actually talked to the mutant population, and the Brood King situation is under control. Novar says he'll take Nova's word on the Brood matter, but the Utopian Kree are concerned about weapons proliferation, namely astronuclear weapons. For instance, the weaponization of suns. He then makes a point of saying that he's talking about the Pyre, which they apparently claiming, rightfully so, that the Alliance is going to use it on Earth. Though Kulrit states, hey, the Emperor was raised on Earth. His friends, his husband, all from Earth. In all the ways that matter, it's actually a good distinct possibility that the Emperor is more of a native to Earth than Nova. And so, the Kree Skrull Alliance is and will always be humanity's ally for as long as our liege sits on his throne. But Novar states that, okay, that's great, but what about the Utopian Kree? The Kree Imperium wants breakaway factions like the Utopians back under their banner or dead. Though Valor states that that's not the will of the Emperor. As long as Dork sits on Dork the Eighth, Hulkling, Teddy Altman sits on the throne, the Kree will marshal all their efforts toward peace. And kind of stated as, but then but Novar does ask what happens if Dork the Eighth loses his throne. And Super Skrull simply says, for all our sakes, may that day never come. But Valor says that insisted Novar pray that day never come, because on that day they will use every weapon, Kree or Skrull, permitted or forbidden, and bury the Utopian Kree in the dirt they choked over Hala. And then Super Skrull looks at Valor and basically says, even I know there was a better way of putting that. Nova suggests that all Pan-Worlds treaties remain in force, unmodified, and applying to all present, and that the Kree Skrull Alliance can consent to the decommissioning of all forbidden weaponry and to inspections from neutral parties. The Spartoi Representative or Empress put seconds to that, and it's on a joke or a vote. Novar says, "Hey, you already know how I'm going to vote. So, I'm going to head to the bathroom and wash the stink off." Though he says as he makes his way to the bathroom, he should have said stench. Upon arriving, he discovers the missing delegate. And the missing delegate explains that there's a shapeshifter amongst them, which admittedly there already was in the form of Super Skrull. He's a shapeshifter. Skrulls, after all, are shapeshifters. But he can't say which delegate it was before he dies. When Valor shows up to explain that, hey, yeah, you won the vote, but then he sees the dead body and Valor pulls a gun on Novar, asking if this is how Novar's so-called utopia operates, assassination tactics, stating that they may have fooled the soft-hearted Emperor with their talks of peace and harmony, but that they won't trick Valor. As he fires at Novar, the gun turns itself around and shoots Valor before reconfiguring itself. Super Skrull then shows up while Novar is literally holding the smoking gun. And so, he's taken prisoner, explains that it wasn't him, but they do need to investigate the matter. Apparently there is backup on the way. That backup being none other than Ranger Rocket on the case. The issue truly ends, however, with a interlude, with an set earlier, an interlude like we were seeing in Marvel books a few months ago. Rocket and Groot are suddenly teleported away and then return. Apparently they were at the Bifrost. There was an island, and yeah. And Groot suggests they never mentioned what happened again, and states that they never did. And that is where the issue ends. That's it for this video. As always, feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Links to my Facebook, Twitter, Patreon, and PayPal are found in the description box down below. This is Rock and Roll Spock signing off, saying, live long and rock hard.